Today, we're going to highlight the statement of activities. This is one of the pre-built templates in the Velixo for Sage Intacct nonprofit solution. The way we're going to do that is we're going to go through a user story, working with the statement of activities and a recap of what we saw. David is the CFO of a nonprofit organization. He's preparing to present to the finance committee. This organization follows GAAP, and they regularly use GAAP reporting, especially with this audience because it's nice and high level and it does not get too much into the details. They use a Sage Intacct dimension for functional expense reporting and for tracking of net asset restrictions. Historically, before coming to Sage Intacct, they used to put this financial report together manually outside the system. They were hopeful that this could be automated, but it's been a little bit rough. They quickly figured out that the quick start categories in Sage Intacct, while they were helpful to make sure that all the accounts were assigned to something, don't necessarily reflect the way that they want to group and report data as an organization. Perhaps more troubling, David's team has not been the most thorough in tagging dimensions on transactions. It's not uncommon for functional expense areas or for restrictions to be left blank some percentage of the time. Because of this, David is finding it extremely difficult to make the system's out-of-the-box reports work for them. There's just too many exceptions to manage, and he needs to figure out how to spend his time on helping with initiatives like the strategic plan for the organization, and he does not have the time trying to figure out another report writer. David found Velixo on the Sage Intacct marketplace, and when he saw Velixo had a pre-built set of nonprofit financial report templates, he decided to request a free trial, and he's hoping for a quick way to get the statement of activities that he needed. Let's see that process in action. So David has downloaded the statement of activities from Velixo's help documentation. He's read through the thorough help documentation that Velixo has provided for the template, and he's going to start out by connecting the template to his Sage Intacct instance. Once connected, he will give the template a quick refresh. And this template is now plugged in live to his Sage Intacct environment. Now, David's organization leverages a user-defined dimension, but he knows that's not a problem. All he has to do is go to the Terminology tab and put in the integration name for that user-defined dimension. That's it. No further effort needed. Back on the Options tab, Velixo's given David a place to choose the one-time settings so that he can tailor the template to his organization's needs. So he's going to choose the dimension that his organization uses to track net asset restriction. Now, again, this happens to be a user-defined dimension in this case, but that doesn't matter. Velixo supports those just the same. And he's going to choose the dimension that his organization uses for functional expense tracking. With these simple one-time selections made, David goes to his statement of activities so that he can map his rows and columns the way that his organization wants to see them. He starts out by just putting in some preliminary date ranges so that he knows roughly the date ranges that he's expecting to see as the report loads. Then he's going to populate the restriction columns and map the restriction dimension values that he wants to set to each column. Now with Velixo, he's not going to have to build a bunch of custom dimension groups in the ERP, but instead he can use Velixo range expressions to combine dimensions on the fly. He also notices that Velixo has pre-built a column to catch null where somebody has not tagged a dimension. So the problem that he has with his staff forgetting to tag restriction is not going to be a problem for him anymore. He's not going to have to build a bunch of custom account groups to figure that out. That is already handled. With his work done there, he collapses this section and turns his focus to the report rows. And he quickly realizes that he is no longer going to be chained to quick start categories. He can now use account groups, account codes, or account ranges to define his row makeups. This is going to be way more flexible. He changes one of the quick start categories so that he can use an account range instead. And happy to see that it works, he'll update the rest of that in short order. He goes to the expenditure section, and it works just fine for him to use the expenditures account group, so he'll leave that alone. But he's going to go ahead and map his functional expense dimensions to their different rows. So he simply inputs the dimension values that he wants to use for each row. David's organization is relatively simple here, so he's mapping his different dimensions accordingly. And watching the data refresh in real time before his eyes. This is all the one-time setup he needs, so he collapses the report. And he's now looking at his finished statement of activities. But David is an accountant, and he's professionally skeptical by nature. Is the data accurate? So he decides to review expenses for Program 1 to dig a little deeper. And Velixo's drill down makes that a very easy task. He explores one of the underlying expense figures, and he decides that he's going to look into the transactions that make it up. This will get him all the way back to the Sage Intacct transaction in the system. And he is looking at the entry that supports that particular transaction. He also decides to use Velixo's pre-built control tab, which is going to help him verify that the data from the report, which is grouped and filtered in many different ways, still ties out or agrees to the numbers from Sage Intacct in a very summarized fashion when they are pulled again from the live Sage Intacct environment. And this report does indeed agree, and he sees that the differences are 0. That was really easy. So he's ready for the finance committee meeting way sooner than he thought. Let's recap what we've seen today. So to recap what we saw there, David took the report from our template environment and connected it to his own environment. The one-time setup consisted purely of making choices to tailor the template to his own environment. Which dimensions was he using for restriction and functional expense tracking? How did he want to map those dimensions into the statement? He found that he was immediately unchained from the notion of quick start categories, given total flexibility to define what made up his rows however he wanted, account groups, categories, or simply account number ranges, filtered the way that his organization wanted to use them. Velixo understood the common challenges of nonprofit and pre-built the report to catch common mistakes, such as users not tagging dimensions, so that he didn't have to worry that his report was going to be out of balance. It was already handled. This immediately enabled dynamic, real-time live reporting with pre-built filters to change his view on the fly. If and when he wanted more detail, drill down was there for him to revisit transactions, and the control tab helped him to further prove that he was looking at rock-solid numbers. With this template, David made gap reporting easy in minutes. He was walking into his finance committee meeting confident, and he knows that audit time is going to be smoother too. Thanks very much for watching. If you'd like to learn more, please contact us at any time.